Hello and welcome, my name is Parky and today I'm doing a quick first impressions gameplay and review video for an indie action RPG which is fairly new, called Grim Dawn. This is still in development by a small team of 6 developers via the name of Crate Entertainment. Crate Entertainment actually contains some of the developers of Titan Quest. Now the game itself, Grim Dawn, is made on an enhanced version of the Titan Quest engine. And this actually shows in some of the character animations. The running animation, for example, is almost identical to that in Titan Quest. Let's first of all talk about the loot system. The game currently supports a multi-tier loot rarity system, as you'd expect from this sort of game. The tiers themselves are common, magical, rare, epic, and legendary. Legendary being the most rare, obviously. Loot is not specifically usable by a single class in this game. Unusually, it provides perks to support numerous different class builds. Now we'll get into this class system a bit later on in the video. It's a bit more complicated than you'd think for this sort of game. As in many other action RPGs, the world is scattered with destructible objects, including doors which don't drop loot, other things that you can break, items of furniture, crates and jars which are randomly scattered throughout the world. When you break these, they have a chance of randomly dropping iron bits and other items of varying worth and rarity, including armour and weaponry. Without spoiling any of the storyline or plot, I'm going to leave that to you guys to actually play the game. In Grim Dawn, iron bits are used in the place of gold in the currency system. As per expected, the inhabited areas of the world make merchants freely available to players, where unwanted loot that you have got from mob drops and throughout the world can be offloaded for iron bits, or indeed bought from the traders for iron bits. There are currently 4 classes in the game. There are going to be 5, but currently there are 4. The first being the soldier class. Now this is the primarily close combat class. It's more of a tanky class from my experience, and it's notably good with swords, maces, axes and shields. It can also be pretty effective with firearms, I've found. The next class is the Demolitionist. This is basically an engineering-esque class. It's notably good with guns, firearms, traps and explosives. The third class currently available is the Occultist. This is the basic mage class of the game, where mana is used for longer to medium range magic attacks. This is actually my personal favourite class, wielding entropic, poison, acid and other nasty forms of projectiles that you can hurl at enemies. Very, very satisfying from my personal experience. We've also got the Nightblade. This is basically the rogue class of the game. This is one of the more squishy classes as you would expect, dealing high damage and quick close quarters attacks with a varying range of stuns and other abilities. Moving on to the skill system. This is where this game is fairly different from other games. Unlike Diablo, when you first make a character you do not choose a class until you reach level 1. And I say it's like Diablo, but the graphical style of this game is very similar. I think it's trying to do the same sort of thing. Obviously a lot of people are going to compare it to Diablo, Torchlight, etc. Name many action RPGs. But I do think the game is pretty good. But getting back into skill system, every time you actually level up, you're given a number of skill points to allocate in that class's or masteries. There are several different tiers of unlockable skills. These can actually be unlocked by putting points into that mastery's overall progress bar, which you can actually see at the bottom of the skill menu. It's the bar at the bottom with the big plus on the left hand side. When you put points into this, as you can see there's different tiers, so when you put 1 skill point in it unlocks the first tier of skills, then 5, 10, 15 onwards until you unlock all of them. This unlocks the ability to actually unlock the skills. A lot of unlocking in this game. But when you've unlocked that tier you can actually unlock those skills by putting more of those points into that specific skill. It's not that complicated, I'm probably explaining it in a very subpar way. However, you can actually further upgrade these skills with further skill points if you so wish. So you have to be a bit careful when you're allocating your skill points. It's a bit more tricky than you'd normally expect. The game interestingly allows you to play more than one class. At level 10 you unlock the ability to take on another mastery. So this multi-classing would allow you, for example, in my case, to create and synergise the Occultist and Soldier classes. So you can have a sort of battle mage build, hybrid tank thing. Very weird, but very cool, and this is something that lots of other games don't do, which I like. It makes for much more interesting skill allocation and gameplay. You can also reallocate skill points by spending money in-game. This can be done by visiting specific skill merchants, I suppose you could call them, throughout the game world in inhabited areas, where you can spend in-game iron bits to reallocate your skills. Moving on to the game world in general. The game graphics are an attempt towards realism, obviously providing an atmospheric, almost dark feeling to the world. The textures in places, in my opinion, are fairly low res, but the overall effect is attractive and provides a fairly immersive experience, in my opinion. There are actually NPC factions in the game, who, if you gain notoriety with via completion of quests, for example, will allow you to access the rewards along the lines of discounts on items purchased from their merchants, additional quest lines, and new item sets and weapons. However, aiding one faction, interestingly, may turn another against you, so you've got to be careful in the long term who you make friends with, because if you make friends with one faction, you may really piss off another one, which is not always a good idea. There is also a currently basic crafting system where recipes and components that are dropped throughout the world can be collected and crafted, as well as finding gems and other materials that are dropped from mobs, etc., being added to armour and weaponry to increase and provide new stats. The game also features rift gates. Now, in other action RPGs like Diablo, they had a similar system. It basically allows the player to use a quick travel system between previously explored locations. Currently, there's only one act of the game available. Now, this is just due to its early development stage. The finished game will supposedly boast between 20 and 40 hours of gameplay per run on normal difficulty, depending on the level of clearing and exploration. Currently, there is not 20 to 40 hours, just because of the fact that they've only released Act 1. Now, they've said that in the future they're going to release the second and third act. Whether they're going to add more acts than that, they haven't currently said, but from the looks of it, there's just going to be 3 acts. There's currently also no option to edit the initial appearance of the newly created character, so as you can see here, you're sort of provided with 2 generic default bodies of a man and a woman, so that is the only choice you get between male and female. Also, there's no NPC speech, audio or cutscenes in the game. Again, I don't know whether this is due to the earliness of the release, or whether they're going to, add those in the future. Who knows? They haven't said anything about it, so we can only guess. In the future, speaking of which, the game can actually be expected to have quite a further few features. The developers have promised the second act, obviously, and hopefully a third act, I'd like to think, optimization and bug fixes, a more in-depth item crafting system, additional difficulty modes and multiplayer. Now, multiplayer currently isn't particularly good, if not actually accessible whatsoever, and currently you can choose between 3 difficulty modes: normal, harder and harder, and that's not the actual names of them. There is also a hardcore mode where if you play your character and die once, you lose your character forever, which is pretty disgustingly horrible. More quests and faction interactions are going to be added, and there's actually going to be a 5th class, as I mentioned earlier. The 5th class is going to be the Arcanist, and that's all the information we have on it at the moment. It sounds like another Mage-esque class, which is confusing, because you'd think the Occultist and the Arcanist would be fairly similar. Who knows? We'll find out when that comes out in 2014. In my opinion, this is a pretty good game to keep an eye on. I'm going to be doing further videos of this on my channel, including perhaps some class builds and some other information. This has just been a brief look at the game in case you're not aware of the game itself or what it involves or gives in terms of a user experience. So if you enjoyed the video, the best thing that you can do to help support me is to actually leave a rating, leave a dislike if you disagree with me and think the game's rubbish but it's not me who programmed it, or leave a like if you really enjoyed my video. There's going to be a lot more on my channel, so if you want to see more, subscribe of course, and you'll see me next time. Goodbye. Awkward, awkward goodbye. Awkward.